I want to cross now to the Sydney CBD and catch up with Coalition Senator from Tasmania, Eric Abetz. Thanks for joining us, Eric. Just a question on the fly out of that issue that I've highlighted there. You'd be aware of these laws. Federal government intelligence and law enforcement agencies obviously have a big role in the terror offences. Will they be liaising with state governments over these issues to see that any terrorists due for release might be able to be kept in jail if that risk is there, if there is a concern about an ongoing threat to the community?
Our law enforcement agencies clearly need to be acting together. I have every confidence that that is what they're doing, and if a senior judge who has had practical experience in undertaking the very long trial that he did comes to the conclusion that has now been published, I think it behoves our law enforcement agencies to work together exceptionally closely to put together the strongest possible case to the court to ensure that the Australian people are protected. The simple fact is that the evidence from around the world is that some of these people cannot and will not be rehabilitated, and if that's the case, then the Australian community expect to be protected. They have a right to be protected, and that is what the important task of our law enforcement agencies is, to protect the Australian population.
Let me go on to the other issue I highlighted there. It focuses on the New South Wales state government and the climate change policy difference between the Nationals and the Liberals, incredibly playing out from within Cabinet, of course. This is a very similar argument to what we've had nationally. How can this sort of a divide be maintained within a government? How can you have John Barilaro saying that that 2050 goal is reckless, would kill the economy, yet that's the official policy as espoused by his own Environment Minister?
New South Wales state politics is way beyond my pay grade, but let me say that on the national level, I think Scott Morrison has hit the right course to ensure that we don't prejudice our economy, our household budgets, our manufacturing sector by pursuing targets which clearly will cost the Australian population in dollar terms and our way of life. So what we've got to do is at all times, and this is what I've been banging on for a while, is to get to the pain to gain ratio. What is going to be the economic pain in delivering this policy, let's say zero emissions in 2050, and what will be the actual, underline actual, environmental gain or benefit of having zero emissions by 2050. And unless that can be fully explained, then I think the Australian people are quite entitled to say that some of this hyperbole that we've been hearing of late needs to be brought back to reality, needs a reality check, and that is where I think the federal government is on the right track, taking these things step by step while seeking to ensure that energy prices come down, and wholesale prices in fact have come down in recent times, and that's the sort of policy that people struggling with household budgets, small businesses want from the federal government, and that's what we're delivering.
All right, but the politics of the New South Wales Coalition and Liberal Party certainly play into politics in Canberra, and you know full well that colleagues of Matt Kean's, moderate Liberals in your own party in Canberra, like Trent Zimmerman and others, have been pushing for additional climate action, even though there was an election just last May. And you've got this same sort of more action versus the current policies debate playing out within the federal coalition. Does that need to be put to bed, or is there an argument to be had?
There's a significant difference, I think, with the New South Wales situation, where cabinet ministers seem to be going head to head, and a backbencher providing his particular view of the world. But you know that the moderates in your own party, perhaps spooked by a lot of the media coverage and in fact fake news around the bushfire season and the tragic tragedies that befell so many communities there, are looking to push for more action. Are you saying that they will be quelled, that they won't get far in the coalition party room, or is there a chance that you could see the Morrison government increase its action, its emissions reductions policies in this term of government? I would like to think that the vast bulk of my colleagues fully accept that the last election was in fact as declared by Labor and the Greens, a climate change election, and the people of Australia voted for the Morrison government's policies, which were to proceed in a measured, proper manner to ensure that we didn't set unrealistic targets with doubtful environmental gain, but with huge financial pain to our businesses and our family budgets. So I have a view that my colleagues in Canberra will take a practical and pragmatic approach, but their first consideration will be household budgets, small business, the manufacturing sector, because there's no sense in mugging the economy for no environmental gain. And that is where, rather than emotion, we need some actual facts and figures. What's the cost going to be, and what is the actual environmental benefit going to be? And that is something that people simply are not telling the Australian people.
Well,
and
but
I've got a funny feeling that's why they voted for us.
Well, but exactly. But this is something I've been banging on about for years: cost versus benefit. And of course, the problem is, and even you in the coalition won't admit it, we know there are high costs even for what's been done already. But we also know there's been zero benefit. There is zero benefit. You cannot point to any environmental benefit from any of the climate policies you've put in place already. Is that not true?
Are you telling me that the rain we've just had recently wasn't as a result of our lower emissions target? Look, I think you're right, Chris. People cannot point to any environmental benefit from the action taken thus far. It's all about showing leadership or being in lockstep with the world community, but the United States is out of it. China, India increasing their emissions. In fact, China now more emissions than the United States and the European Union put together. So our 1.2, 1.3% being reduced by a couple of point-something percent will make absolutely no difference to the world environment, but it will make a huge difference to our way of life and to our household budgets.
Now, you've been in the thick of the Senate inquiry into the sports rorts affair. A lot of people saying you scored an own goal yesterday by asking about whether any of these grants were ineligible. It's a complicated argument around that. Some were later found to be ineligible. This will go on for a long while. A lot of people are fascinated by this in the Canberra bubble, especially those who got the election wrong. Now, I think the public will make up their own mind. I think we all know that politicians spend money with politics in mind. But this is the problem, isn't it? There is no excuse for that fund even existing. You're a small government person as a Liberal. Why on earth is a Liberal government having a fund of $100 million where a federal government is getting down into the nitty-gritty of throwing money at sports clubs? That's obviously a rort. The whole intention of the fund is to play politics, because a federal government should have no place spending money on projects that are properly the domain of local councils, if not state governments.
I hear what you say, Chris, in relation to our federal system. Regrettably, that is no longer the way it is. That is why people like Tony Abbott and myself, when we came to government, sought a Federation white paper to try to have strict boundaries around who was going to fund what. But these days it is a mishmash of federal, state and local government supporting roads, supporting sports grounds, etc. And might I say...
But it's all about politics. The only reason to have that $100 million fund was to play politics, pure and simple.
Well, I would also say to you that there are many mums and dads and volunteers that are doing fantastic work, and if you know about the social benefits of young people engaged in sport, then it is an imperative to ensure that they have the proper facilities.
Sure, but not the federal government. Not the federal government. Look, I need to cut that off, because related to that, I just want to show you a debate that's broken out on Twitter today, an attack. Let's first have a look at a tweet here from the Channel 10 journalist Paul Bongiorno. And he's now with some other leftist organisation, I think. But he says, I noticed the Finance Minister, Matthias Cormann, is into assertion. He asserts against evidence of the independent auditor after 10 months of investigating that everyone was eligible. It's a technique invented by Goebbels, the big lie. So here we go, the Nazi slur thrown at Matthias Cormann, of all people, of course of Belgian origin with that strong Germanic accent. Let's see what Matthias Cormann has responded publicly. Are you for real? I speak with a German accent, so you accuse me of being a Nazi. You are absolutely despicable, Paul Bongiorno. You clearly do not know what you're talking about. This is a disgrace and you should apologise. Your view on that, Eric Abetz?
Well, I am subjected to exactly the same sort of attacks because of my German heritage. I was born there, and the Nazi slurs that come my way on Twitter on a regular basis, but can I tell you, I never respond to them because I think they are beneath my dignity of responding to them, so I don't. But Matthias Cormann's summation of Paul Bongiorno, spot on, it's correct. But the most important thing is it is so highly unprofessional, and how somebody has existed for so long in the media behaving in such an unprofessional manner is something that I think the media itself should be looking at and asking. This sort of bilious bias is completely unacceptable.
Thanks for joining us, Senator.
Always a pleasure.